class. When we talk about new religious movements in Africa, they are abbreviated as NRM. Sometimes they end an S. What I've just told you is when we study the new religious movements in Africa, we attempt in a very bold way to show the rich diversity of African religiosity, a continent which John Beatty, Professor Beatty once described it as notoriously religious, a community that doesn't know how to live without God. In other words, whatever we do, whatever discourse we conduct, the political discourses, the social discourses, ecclesiastical discourses, aesthetical discourses, ethical discourses, religion is always there because we are in a continent that sees religion like culture, fitting in all pillars of culture. Hence, when we see the mushrooming NRMs or new religious movements, where every village you see a church opening with sometimes strange teachings. Yes, panda mbegu, plant the seed. Somebody even told us we give him 10K, then we'll be blessed immeasurably. I don't know, or even very strange teachings. Some are very conventional, some are not. Hence, these are new forms of religious movements in Africa, which are daring. They say things we never imagined. Maybe 50, 100 years ago, we couldn't imagine. These things that are happening in the religious domain, we never imagined they would take place. Now, when we see all these things, they display the notorious nature of African people, the notorious nature of even African religiosity itself. Of course, there are dangers inherent in this new emerging religious movements and forms of conducting these discourses. So in this course, we look at the plurality in religiosity from an African perspective. Hence, our focus is Africa. Although, as we shall see, the source of these new religious movements, it is not in Africa, it's outside Africa. But Africa, being the most religious continent in the 21st century, we always read in these discourses of NRMs, even though they are not the people who brought it up. In a nutshell, the course is designed to inform you about formation, growth, expansion, and development of non-missionary Christian churches, new movements that are, some of them are not necessarily Christian, some are Islamic, some are even Islamic sects, as we shall see. Some are just cults, some are just cultic, some are just sectarians, they are sects. So new religious movements are a common phenomenon in Africa, and this has lasted approximately 100 years throughout the world. That's the time we started getting more about these NRMs, about 100 years ago. In Africa anyway, it could be less. Though now Africa could be reading or is actually reading in NRMs, the reality of the matter is the world experienced these NRMs 100 years ago. So when you look at the contents that we are handling in this lecture, or generally the whole course, it will explore new religious movements and focus on the general history of NRMs, the background factors in the coming of NRMs, the Western understanding of NRMs.
Are you still talking? I cannot hear you.
It will continue. The course will also focus on not just the Western understanding of NRMs, but also the African understanding of NRMs. There is also the specific and general characteristics of NRMs. There is also sampling of at least 3 new religious movements where we shall have case studies, and which will make it a practical business. There is also, the study also look at the dangers and threats in NRMs. It will also look at the positive contributions of new religious movements. Sometimes we may think these NRMs are just bad. Some are just more or less conventional religious groups, as we know religion. And you know, in religion, there is what we call it golden rule of all religion, which says, do unto others what you would have them do unto you. Do unto others what you would have them do unto you. And that's aphorism cuts across. Christians have it, Muslims have it, Hinduism have it, Buddhists have it. This is a common saying that you find in all major religions. And that is one way of measuring or telling whether a particular sect, cult, or religious group is a conventional religious outfit. When it does not conform to that creed, do unto others what you would have them do unto you, don't take it seriously. If they are advocating killing people, whether they call themselves Mujahideen or they call themselves the Friends of God or Army of God, be careful, because religion has to do with morality. And morality will always tell you, do unto others what you would have them do unto you. And that comes cut across. We have heard, and I keep repeating Abraham Lincoln's famous saying, where he appealed to the morality and the conscience therein, when he was asked, what is your religion? And he said, when I do good, I feel good. When I do bad, I feel bad. That is my religion. In other words, that there's a sense in which major religion or conventional religions do not have cultic behaviors of killing their enemies, killing the so-called enemies of God, doing bad to those who do not subscribe to their position. If they don't attend to other people in a manner that has morality, that has moral underpinning, then we can as well say they are cultic. And there's a lot of cultic behaviors generally in NRMs. And of course, I repeat, that does not mean all new religious movements are bad or are not conventional. Some are conventional, but they are still new in the sense that they have unique, or sometimes you may put it positively and say, some have very creative way of worship or creative ways of handling their religious discourses, which does not amount to being out of tune with the actual standard religious expectations. So we shall also look at NRMs and socio-political matters, and also NRMs vis-a-vis Christianity, NRMs vis-a-vis Islam, because within Christianity it has got her own NRMs. Some of them have said they are cultic, some are sectarian, but they are new in the sense in which they handle their religiosity. Now, we shall also look at the future of NRMs in Africa, among other topical issues. Now, you are expected to explain the concept of NRMs. You expect them to apply knowledge gathered to help our contemporary society in handling NRMs. So application is geared towards you making you a giraffe in society. In other words, you should be in a position to guide other people who are being misled by some of them that are chaotic, dangerous. It is Professor Wallace Soyinka who always, of course, he was dismissing TRC, Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa, and he didn't appear to like Archbishop Tutu as the chairman of TRC, as particularly him coming from the religious sector. But he made a statement we can take very, very seriously when he said, "Saints, be careful. Saints are very dangerous for your health. Be careful." In other words, he was saying some of these so-called saints in NRMs, they may be con artists. Some of them may be cons, just cons or anything. They can be dangerous and misleading. So he was actually cautioning something. This lesson will help us to identify where are the demarcating line between conventional religious grouping and mere NRMs. And when we talk of NRM, we want to mean those who have gone, outside the conventional way of in which we understand religion. Because we have noted NRM is not necessarily a negative tag. Although, as you shall see, most of these NRMs in Africa that we shall consider in this lecture, they are not necessarily good. Some are bad or have issues that we want to raise. If you take the case of Simon Kimbangu of DRC, Congo, Simon Kimbangu could not celebrate the Holy Communion for Christians with what the conventional church do. He would take honey and mix it with other things. And then people will not take wine. They'll take, that honey that's too much in the area where his church is located, as you shall see. When you think of Reggio Maria, they have their issues. If you look at Jehovah Wanyonyi's religious outfit, it has a very unique way, and some of it is a bit controversial. We may not know whether to agree with him or not. So it's quite a new phenomenon. Of course, you can go on and think of Aroti churches, the Karenga churches in central Kenya. You may want to talk about Akorino churches. Does that mean they are not conventional, all of them? There are some who have very credible theological positions that even the so-called mainline churches may want to learn from them. But they are still extremists that we may want you to assess, to explore, and also we go on and demonstrate case studies so that we can be able to be the giraffes of society and guide society on matters that are dangerous and brought about by new religious movement. So we shall, as we noted, we shall assess the future of these people. Now, going directly to the topic, we may first want to address the questions that may help us think through this topic. We can lead some of them. There are quite a number, 18 of them, that are listed that you can see on your screen. One is discuss the nature, origin, and characteristics of any religious movement outside the Christian religion. Number two, distinguish between apotheosis and political cult and demonstrate its relevance to your own African context. Number three, with relevant examples or illustrations, discuss any two common cults in African contexts. Of course, you show details why you think it is cultic, because the people who propound that I would call faith, they don't appreciate themselves. They will not be comfortable being called cults. Yes, when you call Adventist cults, they not even Adventist, even Jehovah Witness, some will be very uncomfortable. They are, as far as they are concerned, they are conventional religious outfits. So you have to give reasons. What are the characteristics of a cult? And why do you think this religious outfit is a cult? Of course, some lean too much on the leader. Some even call their leader God or the holy Pope, or even the Savior. Some even call them the Messiah. Quite a number. Of course, if they are conventional, they will not do that. Now, the other one, question 4 is, show the relevance of doomsday cult to the African religious consciousness. Of course, the story of doomsday cult, though is not an African phenomenon, or it didn't take place in Africa, when somebody announced doomsday, like more or less the final end of the world. We shall see these things. Number 5, suggest the various ways of responding to any two form of religious cults of your choice. Other question. Question 6. Critically show the significance of standing the new religious movements. Question 7. The political ministry of Sun Myung Moon of the Unification Church resonates well with the Kenyan context. Discuss. Of course, in a discussion question, we expect and discuss an introduction where you tell us what is this political ministry of Sun Myung Moon of Korea. We need to know Unification Church. What is it? Of course, it's called a church. Some would call it just NRM. Of course, the characteristics makes it new. It could be conventional, but the characteristics, sometimes indulging in politics, sometimes going against it. The mercurial characteristic. You know, mercurial means the flickering, the way we have talked about Afro-Pentecostals or African Pentecostals having a mercurial characteristics, not stable as such. Sometimes you find them fighting those who are indulging in politics. Sometimes you even find them contesting. There's some mercurial characteristics. There's some erratic characteristics when you don't stick to a certain formula that we can count you from. Okay, there's also question 8. With illustrations, demonstrate the view that Afro-Pentecostalism is the African version of new religious movement as seen in the Western context. Of course, when looking at such a question, it's another discussion question, like the one I was talking about, Sun Myung Moon. In a discussion question, you define the concept in a question, like who is this person? What is his religious outfit? And then you have another section on points of agreement that this situation is as it has been stated. The third position is points of disagreement. After all, it's a discussion. It is a debate. You give about 2, 3, 4 with illustrations. Then you conclude and by bringing us to the position that you think you stand for, or try to kind of bring what I would call bridging those 2 points together, the points for and the points against, so that you can now tell us what you consider to be the true position. Or see, for example, the one we talked about, Sun Myung Moon, was he and his church resonating with the Kenyan context? Because we may also want to know what is the Kenyan context of NRMs, because that is the issue. Is it very mercurial, erratic? Is it so charismatic? It is so proactive? Is it indulging? Does it indulge in politics of the day and all that? The other one is critically trace the Western and the Eastern background of the new religious movement. We shall look at it because some of these things, the Western and the Eastern, provide us with a lot of background to NRMs in Africa. So we have to look at the Eastern and the Western background of NRMs. Question 10. Demonstrate the cultic nature of NRMs. What is the cultic nature? You can also show where they go beyond the conventional approaches. That puts us wondering whether they are normal or conventional religious outfits. Question 11. The modern Christianity in Africa in its contextual nature falls within the ambit of the NRM discuss. That is another one. Even the so-called conventional Christianity, there's a sense in which it is also falling within the ambit of the NRM. I would want to hear about Muslims in this group to tell me whether they also think, if where there's talking of modern Christianity, you can change and talk of modern Islam. Maybe that is where somebody forgot, or we forgot to get the question on modern Islam in Africa, in its contextual nature, falls within the ambit of NRM. We can argue very well on Islam and refuse to talk about Christianity if you are Muslim. And in Christianity, when they contextualize, when they Africanize Christianity, remember John Beatty said, Christianity has made a real claim on Africa. But the question is, has Africa made real claim on Christianity? In other words, have we Africanized Christianity in Africa? Have we allowed Christianity to remain in the Western attire as the missionaries in the 19th century brought it? That shows we have not been able to make it an African religion. Christianity remains a Western religion because of the presentation. If it is presented in Western garments, what that means is it will never reach the soil of Africa in a manner that is acceptable and in a manner that it is going to be felt. It will have impact. Yeah, you may ask even Rwanda genocide of 1994. Why did these people fight? They speak one language, Kinyarwanda. They have intermarried for years and years. They are more or less one tribe, one ethnic group called Rwanda, but they killed one another when they were triggered to fight one another. When somebody exploited the ethnic card, or why should people in Rift Valley kill one another during the 2007 post-election violence? Yet they have also intermarried for years and years. They have also attended similar churches, same churches. They have done business together for years. How did it happen that politics made them realize that they are enemies or they are not one people? Those areas I've mentioned, the Rwanda part, the Rift Valley of Kenya part, they are 80% plus Christians. Some are built there, 90% Christians. Yet, what is wrong with the so-called African Christianity? Because in areas where there were Muslims, there were little violence. There was less violence, particularly in reference to Kenya. But why did it happen that the areas where Christians from different ethnic groups fought? Does it mean the brand of Christ is less thicker than the brand of ethnicity? Those are some of the questions to ask ourselves in using PLO's wants. Is the brand of ethnicity too thick that it has the final say whenever there is conflict? Of course, me, I would, as an African scholar, I would talk about contextualizing, the theory of contextualization of Christianity or religion that has converted people. A converting religion has to be contextualized. Otherwise, if you say that religion converted people who later fights amongst themselves, they take a machete to kill one another or to take guns against one another, yet they were worshiping the day before. I would argue there is no conversion there. I would call it proselytization. In other words, it is false conversion, not conversion. Proselytization. In other words, if there is false conversion or conversion that has not been contextualized or, brought in dialogue with the local context, it means that is a Sunday religion. It is not a daily religion. And when we now come to the mainland churches and we start contextualizing them, like where we bring in indigenous songs in mainland churches to enrich the Christian message and make it acceptable in Africa, we start looking like we are within the armpit of the new religious movement, because they are new in the sense of the way they present their religious and theological discourses. Okay, so we can discuss and say yes and no that the contextual nature or the contextualizing aspect of modern and mainland Christianity in Africa, in a sense, it falls within the armpit of NRM because of those peculiar manner in which contextualization brings, or that relating with the context. On the other hand, you can say no, okay? Because most NRMs go to the extreme, the very, very extreme. There are those that exchange spouses. They call spouse swapping, and they don't find it a problem. Yeah, we know of them, some of them, we have other publications along that line from a research done. When people go to such extremes, including killings, ritual killings, that it does not augur well or doesn't resonate with the modern Christianity in the way we may think of it from the mainline church's perspective. Question 12. It reads, the moral question in Africa's religiosity in the 21st century is a single major concern that has to be addressed. Now, that question again takes us to some of the issues I've just mentioned, such as wife swapping, populist sermons, false hopes, false promises, financial siphoning, misappropriation, land expropriation of the very poor whom you lead, actually exploiting the poor. You live very well, very comfortable, but the people you represent, you impoverish them through the same gospel or religious message you give by threatening them. If you don't bring you are part of the farm, or cut it and sell and bring money to my church, you get demons disturbing you. We have had such cases. Those are moral questions. Those are moral questions. And they need to be addressed. But you can't say that it is a single major. Well, on one hand, because it's a discussion, you can say yes, it's really a major problem, and demonstrate what these moral issues in these NRMs are. You remember the case of Joseph Kibwatere of Uganda, who told people to sell all their property in 1999 as they focused on 31st December 1999, when when there will be rapture or the end of the world. So they sold everything, all the food, cows, goats. They came with their children and settled in the church compound, so that on exactly 1st of January 2000 at midnight, Jesus Christ, Nabi Isa for Islam, for Muslim, the way you call him, Nabi Isa, he will come to take the clean, the faithful ones who will be camped in that church in Uganda. So that is what the pastor did with his NRM. And that was immoral. That was immoral to say so, unless that was the reality. But when the day reached, they were told, wait a minute, God wants you to continue worshiping. Now, if you sold everything, you have nowhere to go. Your children are crying in the church compound. And you have cheated a vulnerable fanatically driven Christian, where your religion becomes chaotic. What are you doing? What are you doing to such people? Those are the extreme parts that build on the moral question. And you see, there is also the Zambian Ghanaian pastor who told people to drink his bath water. You can imagine that's a very serious moral issue. He tells them, when you drink this, the way you say, drink this in remembrance of the blood of Christ. So he tells them, if you drink this bath water from me, all your problems are solved. They drank it, they were saying it is sweet, it's good. But you see, what was he doing? So these moral issues can be a major concern. The moral question can be a major concern that has to be addressed. On the other hand, there are many other concerns, especially when some say we don't want to be registered with the government of that country in Africa. When they say they don't need to be registered, they are registered in heaven. Now, you see, they contradict Philippians, is it 3:20, when St. Paul tells Philippians, don't you know you are citizens of heaven? Being told you remember you are citizens of heaven is one way of St. Paul's telling Philippians, you also remember you are citizens of Roman Empire. So you have two identity counts, the Roman one and the heavenly one, and you must balance. The failure to balance is a major concern, just as the moral question. So the failure to balance their theological positions, their theological discourses, it's another one. There are those members of these new religious movements, the Afro-Pentecostal wing, for example, who travel all over. They travel all over, following key known televangelists who visit Kenya, for example. You find one is in Mombasa, he comes, is it T.D. Jakes? Another one used to be called Monroe. All those big names from America. You keep following them up, attending these crusades, and then you destroy your own home. You hurt your family. You take all the resources as you travel all the corners. You have not even paid fees for your children. And the end results, they end up divorcing with the husband or with the wife because they have become too fanatical to an extent that nothing now matters. So African religiosity has quite a number of issues today. Even how we apply contextualization, Africanization, okay? We have issues besides the moral question. Of course, you can also say it's also moral. But there's also political angle. There is also political angle in all this. Political angle, I mean, when some people are misused by a politician, when politicians go and, buy the church with their big money, or buy the pastor, or pocket the pastor, the leader of these religious movements. Now, that is also a very serious question, which may go back to the moral, but the political dimension is what I want to put here so much. Also, when you announce to us, God has told you to take this parliamentary seat, why wouldn't you be kind enough and tell us you have interest to contest and you are a citizen? You are not barred by the laws of the country. Even the holy books, Quran, the Bible, they don't stop you. When you tell us you have been sent by God, you are taking it, and then you fail to get it, you also bring a very major concern, a very serious concern here, because we wonder if you can make such simple mistakes, what about us? We who are following you. What about being politically partisan? You are not contesting, but you are partisan. Okay? Look at the groupings in Kenya that are there today. The Kiereweke, vis-a-vis Tangatanga. Most clergy have taken possession, whether they are Muslims or Christians. They have taken possession in a very shameful way. Why don't you resign and contest yourself so that it is clear you are in a certain party? Why should you stay in a non-partisan religious outfit, and when you are there, you start doing what? Doing anything you want. You know, play around with those people who are looking at you, not as a politician, but as a religious leader. You can resign. If you don't win, you can come back. And, you know, disconnect yourself with the leadership in the religious sector for the time you are in politics. That can do very well. But don't be there reading a church. Resign and then come back if you have to later. But telling me that you are taking 2 political offices at the same time, it's a bit of a challenge. So there are quite a number of issues of concerns that you can look at. We are not trying to say to get clergy or out of politics. They can contest as citizens of the land, but they have to resign that time so that they don't confuse other members. So you can now talk about the party that is sponsoring you to stand as a member of parliament or member of the county assembly. That is a different position altogether. Alternatively, if you are nominated and you still want to go on, so you have not contested, you come back. You have to be very clear that when you are serving both constituencies, you are not overemphasizing or actually emphasizing the party that sponsored you when you are in that church, because that puts a very serious, that poses a very serious concern, particularly if you are in an urban area where people are divided. Of course, there are areas where people are not divided. It may not cause anything. Those are considerations to make. So the question was, the moral question in Africa's religiosity in the 21st century is a single major concern that has to be addressed. Yes, it has to be addressed, but there are many other concerns. So there are points of agreeing, now that it's a discussion, and there are points of disagreeing. The other question is, cults emerge from the cultic milieu. That is Roy Warris, a very, very famous scholar, a specialist in NRMs. We are reading a lot from him. So you can go on and look at the cultic nature. Of course, most major religions began as cults and then graduated into conventional religions. Cults means they can do very strange things, including taking blood from one another as a sign of covenant or anything. Very cultic and very strange. But if it remains there, a cult, all the time, then there is a problem and it has to be taken care of. Question 14. With illustrations, show the relationship between cults and NRMs. Okay? Show the difference. Because there should be, whether you say there is element of cultism in any NRM, I can say not exactly. We noted from the very beginning that there are some NRMs or new religious movements that are more or less conventional religious movements, very well organized. There is no confusion even in leadership, no worshipping of leadership, no over-reverence of their leadership, no calling their leaders Messiah. You call your leader Messiah, or God, or Jehovah. That is cultic. And there are things that are not cultic in some of them. So we can try to clearly show the distinction between the cults and NRMs. Question 15. Apocalyptic and millenarian. Apocalyptic and millenarian movements are the real roots of NRMs. Explain or discuss. Explain is easier because you are just trying to prove that statement, but discussion is argument. And when we talk about apocalyptic, we know apocalyptic comes from the word apocalypse. These are Greek terms. Apocalypse is all about revelation, like apocalyptic book of John of Revelation, whereby it talks about strange things that will happen from the revelation in God. And this revelation he gets, they are also peculiar sometimes, strange sometimes. Something else, millenarian movements. What are they? We have noted Joseph Kibwatere. He told them after 1,000 years, Christ's return is imminent. And he goes on to tell them, bring everything and we look at God and Christ will meet you. Come to the church. Of course, the worst thing in Joseph Kibwatere in Uganda, they crowbared, they gave poison to the believers when those who died hadn't died by March. Because they went there, they got very poor, waiting for the Savior, Jesus Christ. He didn't come. And then they started telling them, continue kuomba na kutubu, wameishiwa. They are being told to pray and pray, worship a lot and a lot. Your sins will be forgiven. Continue, they cry there in ecstasy, in a mystical way. And when they continue with the mysticism there, finally, Pastor Joseph Kibwatere, this Ugandan priest I mentioned earlier, went on and told these people, take poison. God says, the revelation, the apocalypse that I have, apocalyptically, I want to tell you, take poison. You die quickly so that you go to heaven. You can only go to heaven through death. But you see, they came for ascension as Jesus ascended. But now you change the topic, you change the referee, you change the gear and tell them, no, not at all. Death is death. You have to die to meet Christ, to meet God in heaven. And then they gave them poison. You can see the conmanship. And also, those are chaotic ways of doing things, deadly ways. And then when some didn't die, Kibwatere and his pastors crowbared them with machetes till they died, including children who are not died and buried within the church compound. So you can see, finally they left. They could not be pursued by the Ugandan forces, and because they probably had gone to the Congo forest and joined labels there, fighting in the forest. You never know where they went. Now, those are millennialist movement who are also chaotic, and you can see the thin line. Sometimes millennialists can also be apocalyptic or talking about revelation, unique revelation, okay, supernatural revelation. So the millenarian movements can be said to be the real roots of NRMs. You can explain along that line, basing on various examples that we have and we shall consider. Or you shall do a lot of research and you may see this could be the way. On the other hand, you still have a room to say that the NRMs are not necessarily chaotic. They are those, as we shall see in the Theosophy, who approach Theosophy in the West, Theosophy, a movement called Theosophy, we shall consider next week, where they talk about scientific NRM. They use science to understand God. You know, the byproducts of industrial revolution. They use science to understand the faith. So it is not necessarily through apocalypse or religious mysticism. This is mysticism. Mysticism. Both apocalypse and the millenarian movement, or apocalyptic movement and millenarian movement, they are all byproduct of mysticism, where you forget yourself and get you lose yourself ecstatically and in your religiosity, and you kind of approach it in a different way. The other one, question 16, demonstrate your understanding of Theosophy as scientific new religious movement, scientific NRM. We shall consider Theosophy on its own later. Question 17. While building from a particular case study, demonstrate your understanding of the characteristics of NRMs in your context. While building from a particular case study, demonstrate your understanding of the characteristics of NRMs in your context. we have noted so many things. In our African context, we have seen some appearing chaotic. You can explain what chaotic is all about, the dangers it poses. We can also talk about from the moral angle, the moral challenges, the moral concerns that we have noted, we noted much earlier. You can also demonstrate the characteristics of NRMs by the vibrancy akin to African religiosity, where African religiosity or indigenous worship or religiosity in general is a bit vibrant. It's not cool like the British one, but it is full of drama, full of music, full of dance, full of noise. That is the exuberance that characterizes most of NRMs. Even sometimes, of course, that's another characteristics, appearing like they are worshiping their leadership. Leader, kiongozi, ni kama Mungu au ni Mungu wao, in some of them. So that's why we said when trying to look at the characteristics, we have to be very specific. Because who is now not an NRM in Africa today, particularly East Africa, where there are evangelicals, or wherever there are evangelicals, there is a lot of activities that are akin to the activities of NRMs, particular vibrance. The issue is to distinguish between the moderate NRMs, who are more or less conventional churches, particularly within the Protestant wing, and also this other group you call the extremist NRMs, who are purely chaotic, dangerous to society. And so it is not the question of standing NRMs and then we leave it at that. It is a question of we stand NRM or new religious movement and distinguish between the two. Some are, to me, false religiosity or dangerous cults and sects that need to be stopped from destroying people, breaking families, breaking homes, forcing women to be cooking for them, washing their feet like Jesus. Sometimes they become many things we don't want to say here. Those are chaotic, and you cannot say all NRMs are behaving that way. So you must be specific. And let us not brush anything African religiosity as chaotic or nothing but NRM, or you are not in the mainland church or mainline religious group like this mosque, you are NRM, you are chaotic, you are sectarian, you are unconventional. No. Let us understand that religion is always full of renewal. Of course, when you talk of East African Revival Movement, which in a sense is part of the NRM and it is within mainland churches, it came in 1827 to revive the Anglican Church. It went on to revive, became also part of the Presbyterian Church, the Methodist Church, to date. And they talk about, they have characteristics that are purely in tandem with the so-called NRM. So they are really NRM in a sense. Because when they tell you don't keep a dog, God will protect you. When they tell you don't take a bank loan, what happens if God calls you when you are indebted? You go with the debts. You see, they stop you from developing yourself here. Not everyone does that. It is certain groups within the various groups within it, or various people. There are those who follow the heuristic approach in religiosity and don't make those peculiar appeals to the people. The last question, and the last one today, and as we end the lesson, we can't continue. Do you agree with the view that NRMs are the most influential religious leaning group to our African society in the 21st century? You can explain. Do you agree with the view that NRMs are the most influential religious leaning group to our African society in the 21st century? As for me, this question can be tackled the way we talk of discussion questions, where you give the points for agreement. Of course, there is introduction, then points of agreement, about 2 to 3, 4, and then points of disagreement, 1, 2, 3, up to 4. You don't have to list, because every point needs to be argued, and then a conclusion. That way, we demonstrate maturity in these debates, academic debates, because we are able to also see the critics of this reign. What do they say? Even if you don't agree with them, show us how they criticize your style, so that you then correct them through the position you want to take. In the conclusion, you now take a position or agree on one side, with one side of the two viewpoints. So on one hand, I can say NRMs are very influential. If you take Afro-Pentecostalism in Kenya in the 21st century, they are very influential. Everywhere, praise God, praise God. They are politicians, they are supporters, they are nominated leaders, they are advisors of top leaders. They are even being proposed by major parties as gubernatorial candidates, senatorial candidates. They are there in the 21st century, unlike the 20th century, where they were saying, religion, leave politics to politicians. They are now politicians. They have televangelists. Some are televangelists, influencing matters through the television. These people now own properties. They have schools. They have universities belonging to their outfits, their religious outfits. So they are more or less, they are also wearing clerical collar. They are wearing conventional clerical garments as mainland churches, therefore eclipsing them by going there, the methodology of going to them in order to destroy them from within, or capture, or not even destroy, or take whatever they have, or cut their influence when you are doing as they are doing, and show that you are above what these people are doing. Even the things they were criticizing in 20th century, when there was struggle for multipartism, they are now doing it. And they are not doing it for any other reason, to take full control now. Because in the past, they were focusing on spiritual matters. Then they started coming, because they are more charismatic, and now when they are empowered to eclipse even the mainland religious outfits, because they are able to do now what these people are doing in the so-called ecclesial holistic ministry. That holistic or embracing, that is socio-economic ministry. And at the same time, they are more charismatic. Their leadership is more appealing, better orators, more freedom of speech. Not that there is freedom of speech is there, but the way they espouse it, the way they go about making speeches, very creative speeches, helps in making them with time to eclipse or overtake the conventional religious faith outfits. And it is happening, because if you look at East Africa, most, even Catholics, they're embracing charismatism, which is nothing but an NRM spirit. It is a characteristic of NRM to have those charismatic groups that worship, kneeling down, they cry, they raise their hands. All that drama, now even going to the Catholic wing, the charismatic wing of the Catholic Church. The Anglicans, there is nothing Anglican today now. It is called Afro-Anglicostal. It is African, it is Anglican, it is also a combination of charismatism and Pentecostalism. Anglican has been Pentecostalized, and NRMist. It has been NRMist. It has been some characteristics of NRMs are also there in the so-called Anglican. The same case applies to Methodist. It applies to the Presbyterian. It applies to the Lutheran. Particularly, we are talking of Africa, Kenya in Africa, and some neighboring countries. We have seen these things happening. They are influential because they are influencing the worship in the mainland churches, the dancing, the altar calls within the church. That is for these NRMs. And the mainland churches has found itself behaving like them. So they are not less influential. On the other hand, you may argue that you cannot destroy what has taken thousands of years to build. The Catholic Church began very early. How can you destroy Catholic Church, even if you come with charismatism or appearing styles from NRMs? How can you destroy it? How can you cut the influence of the largest church in the world with over 1 billion people. Well, Protestants combined are 1 billion. Catholic Church cannot be influenced easily. Even in Kenya, the Full Gospel Church, which is the largest Pentecostal church, and of course we said Pentecostals are more closer to NRMs and the basically NRM than the mainline churches because of the characteristics. But as you see, when Full Gospel embraced transfer of clergy, organized way of leadership, they became more of a conventional church. And in fact, they could be among the biggest churches in Kenya, eclipsing even some of these mainline churches that came with the missionaries in early 1900, like Seventh-day Adventists. This is bigger. Full Gospel is bigger, actually the biggest. They have over 1 million people. Yet, apart from the Presbyterian, who are 4 million, Anglicans 5 million, the other one, which is 1 million plus, one of the few is Full Gospel Church of Kenya, which is a Pentecostal church in Kenya, a purely NRM church, NRM movement rather, not a church, new religious movement.